it's easy to recognize the vile and refuse, but the things that we struggle with, I don't really see what's wrong with that.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Well, good Monday to you, fam. This is B.
And this is D. It may look a little different today, but we are so happy to have somebody in our studio.
We got a special guest, Brother Stanley Bates. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Man, yeah. I'm just glad you said yes. It's cool to have you. So the reason that we wanted to have Brother Bates with us here, what we want to talk about is leadership. We really want to talk about being a servant leader and being a leader under authority. And our good Brother Bates here has, we feel, quite a bit of experience in this. He probably wouldn't say that.
No.
But he is at our church, local church here in Idaho, a assistant to the pastor, which is essentially an assistant pastor. He also is our men's fellowship leader. He's outreach director. All around just smart, funny, and witty guy. So because he has sat so close to our pastor, we kind of feel you brother would have quite a bit of experience and firsthand stories to tell us and share with how does that look when you are a leader having to try and lead other people in the church, your family, us, for example, because we're in your men's fellowship and we've helped in outreach. What does that look like when you have to be servant and subservient to our shepherd? So what we'd kind of like to have you talk about, just however long you want, is what is your background? Where did you grow up? Be as detailed and specific as you want.
I grew up, first off, thank you for having me here. When we were in conversation yesterday, I thought it would be in the near future, but not immediate future. But sometimes that's good, in season and out of season.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be here. But I grew up in a little town in southwest Arkansas by the name of Nashville. It is a town of less than 5,000 people.
Yeah.
I grew up in the church. My family, my grandparents on both sides of my mom and dad, they were the ones that came into the church. On my dad's side, from what I remember, my grandmother Nim had came in a tent revival, I believe, and then on my mom's side, my mom had told me at one time there was a group of people from a church about an hour away got a burden to come to a little community near where I grew up at to start a brush arbor. And so, as memory serves correctly, and I don't want to, that was the way that I remember it being told. But both my grandparents came into the church, so I was raised into the church. And then, go ahead.
How long ago was that they had that tent revival and they came in?
I don't know exactly, to be honest with you. I would probably dare say the 50s, probably 50s, I would think. I don't, it might have been a little bit later than that.
Okay.
And maybe the brush arbor might be I'm pretty sure it was a brush arbor, but no, I don't recall exactly. It was just as a kid hearing stories.
So almost like shortly after, not shortly, but pretty close after the Azusa movement.
Well, the Azusa, I believe, was early 1900s, so it was several decades later.
Okay. I was just thinking too, a little bit too.
Yeah, no, it was several decades later. But it was I don't know exactly. I couldn't pinpoint it exactly, but I want to say, like, on my dad's side, probably in the 50s, and then probably about the same era with my mom, because my mom, they both graduated in the 60s, and so I think they're my dad was a kid, I think, when my grandparents got in. I'm not sure about my mom. But I was raised in church, and then as a young man, left the church, and then came back by the grace of God. But that's kind of like where I grew up, in the little town. A little community or youth group was, related to everyone in the church. So, and everyone being me and my three cousins and maybe someone else. So it was a pretty close-knit family thing.
Did you like that, or did you? I mean, now looking back on it, did you like that, or did you?
That was all I knew.
That's fair.
That's all I knew, so I didn't know any different. And Nashville is the largest town in the county, so we're the largest town. It's the county seat
Of less than 5,000?
of less than 5,000.
Wow.
They've got a super center now, man. They've graduated. They've had that for a long time.
So when you say your grandparents are the ones who really pioneered being in church, your dad was a child. When you were growing up, were your dad and mom in any type of leadership or any type of ministry or anything?
Not ministry per se. My dad was a musician. Majority of my dad's side of the family are talented musicians that I don't know if any of them have taken lessons. They just have got a skill that just seemed to skip me. But my mom, I don't know to what capacity it was. I do remember she fulfilled some type of role as possibly a church secretary. And I don't know if that was an official thing or treasurer or something along those lines. I just remember her taking care of some of the church business at the bar at our house, not drinking bar, but at the bar, at our house. And as a kid, I remember, just having different church information and just taking care of church business. And then my dad was, like I said, he played the guitar at the church. But as far as like a leadership role in a ministry, I don't recall any of that, to be honest with you.
Okay. So the reason why I wanted to ask that was we not only do you have, this pedigree in our church locally, but you're our close friend. I consider that no matter what happens or where we go or whatever, you'll still be, high up there in regards to friendship. But I wanted to drive home the fact that you didn't come from, a pastor's kid, or you didn't come from a high pedigree of being used in the church or any status, we would say, of leadership. You are now that to me, and we'll get into that later, how you've had an effect. But at the same time, I just wanted to drive that point home. I wasn't 100% sure if your dad was, or if he was in any type of, even a music leader, guitarist. God bless you. I'm a drummer, so get it. But no, leadership is a whole different animal, and it's just interesting to see how involved you are. Anything and everything, you're going to be hands in there getting dirty, and not coming from that is kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, no, my family, my immediate family was not, specifically ministry or even music ministry, Sunday school ministry, nothing to that nature. And that's not, in a negative aspect, because not everyone is in that. But no, I did not come from a lineage of preachers, just normal people. But I look now at some of my family that I grew up with. A lot of them are in ministry, missionaries, pastors, pastors' wives, in that line, which is really interesting, because as far as I know, we just didn't come from that. And so, but, there is a generation after that has come up that are my cousins. Several of them are heavily involved in a lot of ministerial activities in many different capacities.
That's cool.
Very cool. you said there was a time where you had left the things of God briefly, came back. In ministry, we're all called at different times, and whether we listen at that time or not is a whole different story. But about when do you feel like you were getting pulled to that?
It's interesting you mentioned the fact whether we listen or not. That reminds me of when Samuel was called. He was under Eli's ministry, and when the Lord began to call him at night, when Samuel heard the voice of God, he confused it for his man of God. And so he would get up and go to his man of God and say, hey, what did you call me? And so it happened several times. And then Eli finally said, he recognized what was going on. Eli, oh, God's calling him. So my point in saying that is, whether you listen or not, in my opinion, this is, as our pastor says, every cookie is different. When you may feel it or hear it, sometimes there could be needs to be, like I said, this is not concrete, another man that helps that young man recognize, hey, this is what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I can't pinpoint when I first felt it. I do know I've reflected back on a moment one time when I had actually approached a man in ministry and said, hey, how do you know you're called of God?
Yeah.
I can't pinpoint and say that there was something. I just remember this, and it scared me away from ministry. He actually told me in this, just to show that men aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Men are men, and they're just not perfect. He discouraged me and said, well, usually as a kid, he said, you would have known by now. You're not a kid anymore. You're in your mid-20s. You would have known. Usually you know that by now if you're called or not.
So then you've started to feel that call, but those words kind of said, well, maybe that's not it.
Yeah, it instantly shut everything down for me.
Interesting. Okay.
Everyday Christian. It was something that I thought it really, it wasn't something that crushed me. It wasn't something that crippled me. I just was curious, and so because I didn't know, and to say, was I feeling the call of God? I don't know, because at that point there wasn't that, hey, this is what you're feeling. But it was, you would have known by now.
Wow.
And so therefore, and going back, it was when later on, when about 2006, actually when we first made our trip to Meridian, or first came to Meridian, and I began to feel something, not even recognizing what it was. And I don't want to, maybe I'm giving too much detail here, but
no, you're good.
I remember one night during the service, I didn't even recognize what was transpiring, really. I just knew that I would I just wanted to worship God. And I just to worship God and would just worship.
What brought you to Idaho?
What brought me to Idaho?
Besides God.
Well, this is an area that everyday Christian, it is an area that I struggled with. Honestly, my wife and we had gotten into church. I hadn't gotten prayed back through traveling the United States. We were in California, and we had gotten my wife had gotten prayed through into another church in California on the Central Coast in Rio Grande, the Gospel Lighthouse. Brother Joseph Dominguez was the pastor of that church at that time. And so we, as a young married couple, we just had a kid. We were looking to, we were trying to get some security, and we had always felt like that we would be in Utah or somewhere like that. Like I said, we didn't know. And so looking back on it, anyway, I began to pray about some things, and this is an area where I struggled with for many years, and after the fact, not many years, but several years. Anyway, we're in the church about 3 years, and so we wanted more materialistically, being honest and upfront, and not that there's anything wrong with that. What brought us to Idaho was I had a job offer, and I accepted the job offer, and I'd prayed, and things unfolded. And it worked out that way. And for me, I was like, okay. And then once I made the move, then I started thinking, did I make a mistake? Because you hear it constantly, honestly, about people moving, changing churches, and it's a reality that the day and age that we live in, some are okay and some are not okay, and that was the area that I struggled in. Am I okay? And there's a whole story that probably don't have time to go into about that, but that thing's an area that I struggled with that that our man of God stepped in and said, hey, resolve what you need to resolve, and then had some communication with our former pastor and got things resolved. Because as a new convert, there was things that even though I grew up in church, I didn't know. And so I had to, there was things, and if that makes sense, like why we.
Like teaching wise.
Yes.
Got it.
You grow up on an episode, you know why you get baptized in Jesus' name, you know why you need the Holy Ghost.
Right.
But there's certain, I guess you could say, ethics of things that, you don't know. And growing up in a town where people don't leave, grew up in a town of 5,000 people, no one really leaves on it. That I recall, there was no one that ever moved. They might move across town. But in this day and age, people move. It happens all the time. We see it. We have families come in, we have families leave. Yeah. Some are good, some are, as far as
the blessed subtractions at times, but
and it's a reality of the church day and age. It's and many people have different opinions about it, but at the end of the day, it's opinions. And but back to your question, that's how I ended up. Now I know I took a job offer that I'm still at that company today as a land surveyor, still working for that company. Mm-hmm. But in the reality of things, that was an area that I really question myself after the fact. And so there are some, and we do have to, our choices we make, we pay the price for our choices that we make. And I believe, I'm a firm believer in those are things that we need to also teach our children about and tell people about. Hey, you're going to have to pay the consequences. It might be acceptable to do something, but it may not be ideal.
And whether it's a good or bad, there's always a price. So if you go into college, there's a price to pay for that, but you get a reward for it. If you leave the church, there's a price to pay for that, and there's a reward for it. Some are good, some are bad. And when you guys moved here and you felt good in that decision, finally, you started to feel that call? And when you started to feel that call, what was it? Was it just into leadership, or was that into the ministry, or how did that start to unfold?
Or just really anything at that point? You just weren't sure. You just wanted to be involved.
I wanted to be involved. And going back to my previous statement, an area that I struggled with is, I know, looking back, hindsight, I can look back and I can say that I'm confident that it was the will of God that we come here. That was.
I have a thought on that. Did they keep you busy in 2008, 2009 on your new job? Busy enough? Were you
in 2008? I made it through 2008 up until November, and then I had to work traveling for the next. It's supposed to have been a temporary thing.
That's when you were going to Montana, and
that was Wyoming. The first time I was in Wyoming, I was supposed to be there 6 weeks, and I was there like 9 months.
Ooh. Wow. Yeah, I know the bottom fell out, and I was just thinking, I do now know. I remember you going traveling, having to work, but I mean the bottom fell out on all of us, and I was wondering, well, what if he would have stayed with his other job? What would that have looked like?
No, they actually had came and approached us and said, hey, they kept us really busy. They kept us busier than they kept us on payroll. I cleaned the garage and swept the floors of the garage and cleaned the truck numerous times when they probably should have sent us home. They were very gracious. Cool. And they finally came and said, hey, if you guys have any more job offers, I would probably take them, because we can't keep you going any longer.
And if for those that don't quite remember what we're talking about, that 2007, 2008 was when we had the big recession, and a lot of people were not maybe getting out of work, but the work was decreasing, especially in construction, especially in land survey, I would imagine, and things like that. That's what we're kind of referencing.
Right. But some things take some time to develop. And I want to go the move, and I want to address that because, for years or for a year or two, I had to clarify, talking about leadership and ministry. I had to get some things cleared up with the former pastor that I was under, to be honest with you. And because I just didn't know. And I do believe in doing things the right way. And as a young person in Christ, sometimes we don't make the wisest decisions. But like I said, I look now back on the situation. I look back and I can clearly in my whatever you want to call it, not my heart of hearts, but I can look back and say, I believe it was the will of God. The timing of everything, it was the will of God. And sometimes we as humanity and as mankind, we look and say, well, that's not right. But God works in a way that we don't understand. And sometimes God, takes people and puts them somewhere else for a church to grow, or for the individual to grow, for a family to grow, or for the sake of that local assembly. So I don't know everything that has transpired, but I don't believe that I would be where I'm at today if I hadn't have made that. And so I know that's probably maybe conflict crosses people's theology or whatever, but
Well, and I'm happy that you said that you believe in doing things right, and you needed to take care of that, because there's a price to pay for that. It's uncomfortable. I would imagine it was to have to call your former pastor and try to clear things up, especially if there was a disagreement. But the reward was that everything, you were basically spiritually free. You probably had that pressure and that whatever was on your shoulder off, and you knew that next step, that next journey or step in your journey would be free and clear, and probably made you happier.
Absolutely. And it wasn't even a disagreement. It's just, as a young man, I didn't have direction. And then when I came honestly to the ABC, there was things being taught that I didn't know. And so not having the knowledge beforehand, I'm like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm right. That's just, I want to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And so there was just, honestly, it was just lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of not knowing, honestly.
You had to take care of that.
I wanted to make sure that, hey, we're not sideways or anything. And so I was able to call Brother Mascroft, said, you need to call him. And so I called, and everything, we talked, and I could breathe again, because I have a respect for ministry, not because I'm in ministry, but just before I was ever in ministry, I had a respect for ministry, and I don't want to do anything, because I believe that, not that ministry is above anyone, because God's no respecter of persons, but I also believe in doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And like I said, I was young, and because even though I grew up in church, I didn't have a lot of teaching in that area, because you're a kid. That stuff just goes over your head a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
And so as a young adult, I said, we were 2.5, 3 years living for God, and then made the decision to move. And, like I said, I just didn't have that teaching and understanding, and I came here and started hearing teaching and getting understanding. And like, I got to make sure. And I believe it's important that we know what we're doing, and I don't want to have any doubt in my mind about, am I right? Am I wrong? Or am I on the bubble? So clarity is good. Clarity is good in all of our decisions. That way we can move forward in life. And sometimes we make decisions, we pay the price, and we just have to pick up where we left off and go on. God doesn't expect perfection from his saints. We are humans. Not to get off topic, but we as humans, sometimes we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and I believe God holds us to. We think, or other people, we expect perfection. Oh, they made a mistake. They decided to do this when they shouldn't have. We're humans. We're not infallible. Mm-hmm. We are human. We're going to make mistakes, and we're going to blow it big time. But what we choose to do with it afterwards, it doesn't dictate our choices, as our pastor taught. Our choices we make affect our destiny, but it doesn't always affect a heaven and hell type thing. It can, but we just have to be able to recognize that if we did wrong, recognize that we did wrong, take care of it, repent, reconcile, and move forward. There's something called the gospel of reconciliation that a lot of people don't talk about, is making the wrong right.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reconciliation, repentance, but also reconcile what has been done, what has been wrong.
And that's a scary place to be as a saint, as a human being, period, is when you're stepping back and you're looking at somebody else's faults, right? We're hiding our skeletons in the closet while we're telling everybody else, wow, look at so-and-so. I can't believe he made that decision. I can't believe they're doing that. Yet we have a whole past we don't want to talk about.
Right. I don't want people to know everything that I've done wrong. I don't want my family knowing everything that I've done wrong. And that's why, or even bad decisions. But I do believe we need to allow grace and mercy to work in our life, and not, some kind of fluffy grace where, it doesn't matter if you sin or not, because there's a price to be paid. It's just something that we can't expect perfection from imperfect beings. And I think we need to allow grace to work. And I need to take that to heart, because sometimes I'm like, why is that person in my mind not, like, why is that person doing that over and over and over again, but yet not recognizing.
Amen.
Looking at, if I was to take the mirror and turn around and look at why are you, Stanley Bates, doing that over and over and over again? Well, it's not as bad as that.
Yeah.
Or is
and
it?
That's that old Japanese proverb, is failure teaches success. And I try to put that on a spiritual level in life, period. I believe God gave us a brain. And if you mess up, don't go back to your vomit and do it again.
Right.
Like, mess up, pick your feet up and move the other direction.
Right. There's life beyond mistakes. I mean, Moses murder.
Preach.
Yeah, our pastor just preached. Moses was a murderer, yet he was a child of God. He's a Hebrew. He committed murder, but yet he was go on to be the great liberator of the people. He would lead the people out of bondage. And so in today's standards, people would have been done with him. David, after he was king, committed adultery. In organizations, he wouldn't have been able to hold a license.
Yeah.
No, but he wasn't necessarily a prophet, but he was King David. He would, in an organizational standpoint, a lot of people would have been done with him, and he would have been written off.
Yeah.
And yet he was still a man after God's own heart.
Absolutely.
So,
God doesn't expect perfection.
No, which is awesome. An awesome way to kind of lead into the main topic, because leadership under authority is something that we're everyday people, everyday Christians that are leading everyday Christians that are being led by an everyday Christian. Well, leadership under authority is just that. You're an assistant pastor. You're a men's fellowship leader, and I say assistant pastor. Our pastor likes to say assistant to the pastor, just to kind of keep us humble, I'm sure, if nothing else. And you're the men's fellowship leader, outreach director. You have to tell a lot of people, a lot of direction. You have to give a lot of, or at times you have to do a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Delegation. But yet, you have rules that you have to abide by. So you have to make sure that rules are being followed, and that you're following those rules, giving grace while being given grace. Danny, did you have a scripture you're going to read?
Yeah. So this is and Brother Bates, when you want to stop me and reading this, if something comes to you, I just know one of the best examples of leadership under authority is not even necessarily hierarchy. Like, my position is higher than yours. It's spiritual, right? It's our man of God, not that he has a doctorate, or he has some earthly authority that's over us. No, it goes way deeper than that. And one of the best examples that I could find is 1 Samuel 15, when it talks about Samuel speaking with Saul and about what Saul didn't do. So I'm gonna read a few scriptures, just try to highlight those. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. This is Samuel talking to Saul. And spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telem, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. Now we go to Saul came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said unto the Kenites, Go depart, get you down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For ye showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites.
So just something to note really quick is that at this point, it sounds to me that Saul's intention was to destroy everything, because that's what he was told to do. And then he even said to the Kenites, you need to leave or I'm going to destroy you all with the Amalekites. So his intentions right now are still good. Sorry, bro.
And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatlings, and the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. But everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed utterly.
So somewhere he went wrong. When I say wrong, he didn't follow that to a T.
Yeah, it's as it probably will go on. He was doing partially. He did partially what he was told to do.
Yeah.
There's I love how verse 9 starts, but Saul and the people spared Agag. So was there outside influence instead of Saul being the true leader that he needed to be and make the decisions? He had other people whispering in his ear. And anything, I see anything that was vile and refuse. So anything that didn't fit their narrative, that's what they destroyed utterly.
It's easy to recognize the vile and refuse, but the things that we struggle with, I don't really see what's wrong with that.
Ooh. Ooh.
Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, It repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king. Now, for me, that would be probably the worst thing on the planet for me to ever have knowledge of, is God repenting over me being in any leadership, any leadership role. It repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from following me and hath not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night long.
So let me interrupt that right there. Samuel had a connection to Saul. It grieved the man of God. God was upset. God was disappointed. And sometimes our actions, we just think we're affecting, maybe I'm trying to think. There was a man of God that had compassion for Saul. Even though Saul was in rebellion, it broke the heart of Samuel. And it wasn't just like, I made a mistake, but he grieved all night. That, I think we lose concept of that, but if you ever tried to pray, have an all-night prayer meeting, but
yeah,
I mean, really, but this grieved the man of God that he was up all night.
Yeah.
And verse 12 doesn't say he woke up and rose early. He said he rose early.
Right.
So he was literally up all night grieving.
the thing that I also love about what you all said, because I've had this thought from, and I think I might have even said it to a few folks like at church and different times, is that, our man of God and your man of God, your pastor or whoever is, a leader over you, loves your soul, loves you probably as a person more than you think. So him getting up behind the pulpit or bringing you in the office to tell you some things that you don't like isn't because he's winning any favor contests. He's not trying to be the best person on the block. He's saying things he probably doesn't want to say because he cares about you. That's the hardest thing that a lot of people, we don't tend to see that, because he's a leader, a servant leader, and he's doing it for your betterment. Always doing it for your betterment. And yet a lot of people take that negatively, because it's like, well, now maybe you kind of put a little bit on discipline, right? You might get sat down because you did something wrong, or maybe you're told, hey, you need to stop going to this place or hang around this person or doing this thing that you really enjoy, the good, if you will, not the refuse, but the good. And we don't quite understand that. So maybe someone takes offense to that, rather than saying our man of God may have been up all night praying about this, or even in the afternoon been praying about it and didn't want to bring this to you because he knew this is important to you and it's going to hurt, but he does that not for himself.
Right. It's for the betterment of the individual, and as the individual, the family, and as the family, the church. There's more at stake in our decisions that we make than just me.
Yeah.
And as a leader in leadership, when a leader begins to make wrong decisions, as the music director, you begin to make wrong decisions. You begin to not necessarily in the song choices, but personal decisions, or I begin to make personal decisions that are wrong, and maybe I don't see, maybe not even wrong, maybe just that's not the best image that I want you to be representing, because we are representatives of Christ. We're ambassadors of Christ, and we, as men specifically, I believe in apostolic men, Christian men, are needed in this hour. Real Christians, real Christian men, and that could be a whole
topic.
That isn't a leadership, because you should be the leader of your family. You should be the Christian man, the apostolic man should be leaders in the church, and setting the standard, setting the example. But getting off topic here. But when we get that correction, it's not, as you said, it's like when we correct our children, sometimes we say, this is going to hurt me more than it is you. And as the kid, you're like, yeah, right. We don't see the hours that our pastor has stayed up at night praying about it. How am I going to handle this? Because I know this is something that they may hold dear, or I know how personal this is for them, but it's not the best for them.
Yeah. We see that just from Samuel as well. He probably didn't want to go and tell King Saul this information that the Lord probably just gave to him. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's just on that topic. God's rebuke is his love. Without a father correcting us, we wouldn't distinguish the difference between friend or father raising us.
There's an Adventures in Odyssey that probably, if you've been in church any length of time,
Not sponsored.
hashtag. There was one, and it's I forget the episode, what it was, but the idea of it was the kids never got a no. And I can't remember if it was an imagination station type thing, but the kids were never told no. Every time they asked their parents to do something, the answer was always yes.
Oh, man.
And it was like, oh, can I eat I don't recall every detail, but it was like, can I have cake for breakfast instead of bacon and eggs? Yes. And it's like, oh, wow, that's great. Can I have another? And so they were always told yes, yes, yes. And in this episode, it was like, oh, at first it was great. They got to do whatever they wanted. But at the end, it was, by the episode, it's like, what's going on? This isn't, that it was starting to have a negative effect. And when we're always told yes, or if we're told you can do whatever you want, at first that sounds great. No man's going to tell me what to do. But at the end of the day, it's not, all those yeses are real negatives.
And I'll say just real quick, because that'd be a great episode later, a topic to talk through. But the just real quick, I've also noticed that same idea. Kids that were, when I was younger, that were I guess had more. They weren't told no as much. they didn't have as much wanting in their life, turned around and didn't like their parents as much. And I thought that was wild. Why is it that those that get disciplined more actually they love their parents, and those that get more and their parents allow them to do more don't? But it's a thing. I don't get it. But what you're talking about makes sense to that.
Okay, so verse 12 says, when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. I mean, just put your shoes on his feet, walking to where he knows Saul is. Right. It was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set him up a place, and is gone about, and passed on, and gone down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul. Here we go. And Saul said unto him, Blessed be thou of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. So our man of God, right? Samuel in this case, God already spoke to him, said, this is what happened. He didn't perform my commandments. I repent. It repenteth me to even set him up as king. And the first time you see Saul, our man of God, first time he sees us, we go, everything's good here, Pastor. How's it going? We're doing great things for the Lord. And then Samuel said, what meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in my ears? Ooh. And the lowing of the oxen which I hear? So it wasn't even, God already told me you're messing up. It was, well, what's that sound I hear? What is that?
Yeah, it's not, hey, how you doing, Samuel? I want you to come in and have breakfast. It's immediately. Sometimes I think when we're doing something we know we shouldn't be doing, or humanity is like when someone comes around, especially the man of God, hey, everything's okay. I'm good. I got, or, you try to, I did everything. I'm doing everything I should. And, the man of God, a true man of God isn't like, well, okay. He's just like, yeah, then why do I hear sheep in the background? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's because he's got his ear listening, and he already knows. God's already talked to him, and he's just exposing everything before the Lord. We can't keep anything hid from God. Yeah. And a lot of times it takes a man of God to expose it.
Mm-hmm. And Saul in 15, this is the last verse I want to bring up. Saul in 15 said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. So I wanted to hit that point in leadership as well. It doesn't matter who you surround yourself with. If you trust so-and-so to be your help and he messes up, it's on you. You are the leader of that. And then when he says, well, they brought him up from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen. The people did it. I didn't really have a part of it.
The blame game is humanity. Humanity, mankind does not want to take accountability. When left to itself, Saul did not want to take accountability because the people, this is their fault. So there was some deeper issues of the heart that Saul had that it's now being exposed after he's got in his leadership position and after he's leading the people, and it will be exposed. Adam began to make excuses. Well, God, it's that woman you gave me. Yeah. Well, it's the serpent. No, it was the serpent. Yeah, I messed up, and that's where, as a leader, sometimes we mess up. And I believe that Saul could have turned it around if he would have acknowledged his own mistake instead of playing the blame game. Yeah. Or it's not my fault. They did it.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, all of us at that point. Yeah. If we just, I messed up. Yeah. That was me.
Yeah. In the kind of that same vein, in Exodus 32, I won't read the verses, but in Exodus 32 is when Moses goes up to the mount and he gets the tablets from the Lord. Joshua goes up with him. When he comes back down, he's hearing singing and dancing and things. And if I remember correctly, Joshua's going, well, I think they might just be worshiping Moses is like, no,
Hmm.
that's not what that is. So when they go down, he's very angry to see them worshiping this golden calf. And the first thing he does is, I'm sure, I can't remember exactly, but he goes up to Aaron, like, what's going on? He's like, well, the people wanted an idol because they didn't know what happened to you. So then I gathered up everything, and then the gold from everyone, melted it down, and created this golden calf. But he blamed the people.
If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and read it. I believe he says that then I melted their stuff, and out came this calf.
Yeah, it was just like magical.
Right.
I put it in the fire, and it was bing.
If the will of God, it showed up.
Yeah, and he almost begged him, "Don't let your wrath, Lord, be kindled against me, for the people wanted that." And then it kind of goes on to say that Aaron made the people naked, because he saw the people naked, because Aaron made the people naked. But it doesn't talk about him ever undressing anyone physically, but yet it was his fault that they were in that state, because he allowed it. Being the leader, he knew the orders and he didn't follow that. He allowed the people to make that decision, and then he blamed them when you're the leader. And as a leader, we know this, everything in leadership is your fault. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, it's your fault.
Right.
So that's why he got blamed. And it's not good for us to blame the people, or blame our people that we're over. That, hey, well, this went bad because it's your fault. No one's going to follow that.
As a leader, you need to, when you do see things that I'm not a pastor, but as a pastor, as our man of God, when he sees the people as a whole, or maybe as starting to go a certain way, as the shepherd, it's the leader's job, and this can be down into other leadership under another leadership. I learned by watching my man of God, not any book that I've read or any kind of, a lot of people are looking for books, curriculum, workshops, and those are all well and good. But if you'll just watch your man of God, watch how he handles things, watch how he acts, watch how he does things, then base your leadership off of that.
So wait, hold on. You didn't become an assistant to the pastor in a 4-week course online?
No. No.
What?
I don't understand.
But that's where we, and it's that's in anything. That's in employment. There's got to be a correction when you see behaviors being done that aren't positive, not just spiritually, but I know of a situation to where there's been not in a church setting, but in a secular workplace setting, to where there's been certain behaviors that have been uncorrected, and it's been allowed to take place because we don't want to cause we don't want to upset the apple cart. We just the work's getting done. We'll just deal with it. And so what has transpired in this particular situation is, it's not just one individual doing it anymore. It's kind of become it has grown into multiple situations, multiple dynamics, to where it's almost like this has gone on for so long that it's going to be detrimental to try to swing it back the other way or try to correct it. And so now, like I said, this is not a church situation, but it's a secular situation, and leadership goes in all kinds of directions. But as the leaders should have done, was like, stop, we're not doing that, do it the right way. But it's gone on so long that it's going to be a real challenge to get this behavior corrected, because it has grown, and that also can lead into the church. Pastor will get up, and he is not afraid to get in your face.
No.
And I wouldn't want someone that is timid, that doesn't, I don't want to
Ruffle feathers.
ruffle feathers. I want a man of God that is willing to, because it's my soul, it's my family's, it's souls at stake, and it's the church. The direction of the church is at stake, to where if correction isn't given, just do what you want. Well, we did some of it. We did part of what you asked.
The part that was easy and fun.
Yeah, but everything else, we're the vile and refuse. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
yeah, we're not heavy on drugs, but we might watch some Netflix every once in a while. And as always, if you are wondering about the God that we serve and what we believe and who we put our trust and faith in, hit us in the comments, and we will do our best to let you know that.
We love you, fam.
God bless.